Welcome back to the show, Andrei Claude, actor.
Thank you.
Recent star of The Union, which was, I think, as we discussed before, the most watched or most streamed, however you say it nowadays, but on Netflix, the most streamed movie recently. And so, yeah, how was that? How was that experience?
Yeah, that was really, really fun. It was a very different experience for me because it sort of allowed me to venture into a slightly different character, even though there's still an aspect of villain in that role. The fact that it was contemporary was actually very different. So this time I wasn't riding horses and swinging swords, but I was driving fast cars and pressing triggers, shooting guns.
Yeah, because
so
it's
a different
thing.
Approach to a villain for me. Yeah,
because it's a shame. I think we discussed this before, but you have been typecast as a villain, even though the fact that you're a very, very nice guy, a vegan to boot. It is quite unusual that you're actually cast as a villain. But I don't know why. I think it's probably because, you come from Malta, which is a small island archipelago just off of, Italy, Sicily.
That's correct, yeah.
Sicily,
yeah, just a few miles away from Sicily, just a few miles south.
So you got that Mediterranean look about you, and I guess nowadays that can cover, South America, Eastern Europe, Middle East.
That's right. I mean, for a long time in movies, I think the Russians were always portrayed as villains. So in Vikings, for example, that was Ukrainian, but close enough. So that was a East European villain. And in The Union, I play an Iranian. He's not so much a villain because it's the circumstances that kind of make him turn into a little bit more of an aggressive character. But the portrayal of the character from Halle Berry's and Mark Wahlberg's character's perspective is that he is a villain. I won't give anything away just for those who haven't watched it, but there's a tendency for people from that part of the world to be portrayed as villainous characters.
Yeah,
in film.
I think, and in reality, certainly in the press. It's interesting because I just did let's just take a moment there to give a little bit of perspective for those who didn't listen to the first podcast we did together. You were a Dothraki warrior in Game of Thrones, and you were a henchman, a baddie in Vikings, one of the Rus. They were the Rus, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the Rus. The other. Well, I guess were they not a part of the Vikings? They were a Viking tribe as well, right?
Yes, they originated from Kiev, but they had the same sort of lifestyle as the Vikings that we know about through sort of mainstream.
Yes, and it does depend on history, as I found in the last episode podcast I did, is that the perspective of history and what people get taught in history class very much depends on where you live in the world. And we in the West forget that we get taught history from a certain perspective, and those in the Middle East or in the Far East or the global South will have a very different perspective on what they're told. And it's all very interesting. So as you said, your character is portrayed as a baddie, but you know what? He's probably doing what is best for his country, his region. Maybe he's there to stop something very bad happening.
What I find fascinating with villain roles, I think, villains are, in my personal opinion, I think we are all slightly more, in a way, similar to a villain than we are to a hero in real life. I think if there weren't consequences, whether it's legal repercussions or or social, impact, I think we would behave a lot differently, So a villain in a film or in a series, is being seen as that person who takes action, who does what he believes is right, I don't believe villains know that they are evil. I think they truly feel that what they do is for the better good, whether it's for their personal benefit, whether it's for their country. So there's a lot of complexity with villains, and that's why I think, for me, they're very interesting roles. There's a lot more depth, because you sort of just have to be very truthful with yourself as a villain, and sort of not consider what the repercussions of your actions could be,
Yeah, and it is again all about perspective. Did you?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and but you didn't have to learn any. Did you have to go and do like a historical course on Persian history or anything?
A villain course.
Villain course.
How to be a bad guy? No, they don't do that yet.
No.
What I did learn, languages. That's usually, and for me, that's very important, to try and embody the character as much as possible. If the character is from a specific part of the world, I think the language is it's a very pivotal sort of, or rather, a very critical part of building the character. But for the most part, the approach to that kind of characters is very similar to any other one. You read the script, you try and understand what the character's motive is, and then you put together a bit of a backstory to understand how the character thinks, why he's saying certain words, why he's behaving in a particular way, and then you sort of have to just have to find the flow. You don't want to have too many points before you perform a scene. Otherwise it becomes very mechanical. Otherwise it's not organic, and sometimes you surprise yourself. Once you get into the shoes, as they say, of the character, and you free yourself up from all those sort of rules and regulations that come with, the acting, the craft of acting. You free yourself up from all of that, and you just sort of be very present in the moment, and you try to really interact on a genuine level within that sort of frame of mind. You often surprise yourself, and I believe those are the best performances that we watch on screen today. In fact, I think many actors will tell you that in especially, very well-renowned scenes, there was a lot of improvisation going on. The reason improvisation is incredible because it's coming from a pure place. It's coming from a very organic state. You are genuinely responding to the other character in the scene. A big part of acting is reacting. If you're too caught up with what you're going to say, what you're going to do, then it's very mechanical. Then there's very little room for that organic energy to flow.
Yeah, one of my favorite films, so I can watch this one over and over again, is Goodfellas.
Yeah, it's
and
incredible.
And Joe Pesci is kind of famous for it. That how he'll go into a story, and you can only imagine that Martin Scorsese's in the background just saying, because he's gone off script, just go with it, and he'll tell a funny story. And that famous scene where he's, when he goes, that woman, he's like, "How am I funny?"
Yeah.
Funny how, that when he goes,
yeah, the funny how is
he's going to be
classic.
He's going to get his gun out and start shooting. But apparently that was all unscripted, all improvised.
Yes,
and one of the classic scenes in cinematic history.
It's a magical scene.
It is. I mean, he's such a that guy in real life is tiny. He's very, very
Yes.
short. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, so it's even makes it even more.
But in that scene, Ray Liotta, who was, acting across from him, he was just as surprised as well,
Mm-hmm.
So his reaction was incredible also
Yeah.
because he wasn't expecting those lines. So he was, sometimes it's very interesting. You sort of blend reality with acting. So if you're in a scene and someone is throwing lines that you haven't read in the script, and you're thinking like, what is he or she doing?
Mm.
But from a viewer's perspective, that could be the character being surprised by whatever is being said,
Especially when his character is psychotic and
very unpredictable.
very
Yeah.
unpredictable, and easy to get. Doesn't mind killing people. Let's put it that
He
way.
snaps very quickly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That we when we were talking on the phone the other day, you were mentioning how, and it's something I wanted to ask about is during COVID when we had, I guess there was all sorts of restrictions on what you could do with regards to, congregating, and the movie business took a hit, and there was a strike for I think it was a year, at least a year, for the writers. And so how did you manage to get this? How did this movie even come about? Because it came out this
This
year.
actually happened before the strike.
Oh, did it?
Yes. So we shot this close to 2 years ago now.
Right.
And this happened shortly before. What happened because of the strike was a delay in the release of the movie, though. So you had the writer's strike, which obviously affected in one way. And shortly after the actors' strike, the Screen Actors Guild strike, and what the repercussions from that was that, cast couldn't promote the movie because as part of the Screen Actors Guild, they were restricted to do that. So it got delayed probably by about a year. I think the plan was to release this summer 2023 because it's a summer movie. The fact that you are in stunning locations, the last part of the movie is shot in Croatia and Slovenia and all by the coast, so it was around September, October. So around this time 2 years ago. So the sun was out, and it was the sort of typical summer location.
Yeah. Whereabouts in Croatia and Slovenia were you? Because
so we shot in Pula.
Yeah.
And that's in Croatia. And most of the scenes in Slovenia were in Piran, which is a small town, a beautiful town. If you saw the scene, if you remember the scene in the square, so that is, I'm trying to remember the name, but anyway, it's got a particular name, and everything that happened from then on was in the streets of Piran, and it was a very big setup. I believe that for that scene we had over 900 people on set. For about maybe 4 or 5 days. Yeah. So we pretty much took over the whole town to shoot that.
It is a very, very beautiful place. I remember, believe it or not, when I was 1999. Well, I was in the army, and I was based in Bosnia, and my boss decided we would do a relay run back from Bosnia back to our base in the north of Germany. So
how long is that?
It's 1,400 kilometers, I think. It's quite a long way. But we did it in a relay, so we didn't all do the same. I think we did about 140 k's each in 7 days or whatever it was. So not onerous, but it was really fun. But what sticks out at me is because when we got to Slovenia, And it's people don't really think of Slovenia as you don't really know much about it. It's not famous like Croatia as a holiday destination. But I was blown away by that place. It is incredibly beautiful, and we weren't even on the coast. We were inland because it
Yeah.
goes from the beach, from the sea, the Mediterranean, up to the Alps.
And this was 25 years ago.
Exactly, yeah, and it was a really lovely, lovely place.
Yeah.
To the
So
point,
I'm inclined to think that it's probably improved since then.
Yeah.
It looked really beautiful to us.
Yeah, because we used to go
people were lovely as well.
Yeah, we'd got a 96-hour pass, so a 4-day pass to go down to Croatia. This is so weird. I mean, it's 25 years ago, but it was about this time 25 years ago that you'd be up in Bosnia and you'd go down in our armored fighting vehicle called a Warrior. It kind of looks like a small tank, and we were in full gear, body armor, fully armed. You got, but you're fully armed. With a pistol, with an automatic rifle, everything, helmet, and you'd take the fighting vehicle down to the border with Croatia. You get picked up by another, can't remember, I think it was a Land Rover. Then we'd go down to the base, which was in Croatia, next to Split Airport, and you'd go in to the base, go inside one of those big shipping containers in full battle dress, and come out the other side in shorts, t-shirts, and flip-flops, a pair of sunglasses, and you're away for 4 days to have some R&R. And again, and that was in '99, but down in Croatia there on the coast was it's ridiculously pretty. And me and my friends couldn't believe it, just how gorgeous it was. And that was then, and even going back now, it's in fact become a bit fancy. And back then it was kind of raw because it was just not long finished the war. And, you forget these things that 25 years ago, well, maybe a bit longer, 30 years ago, there was a full-on, very bloody war going on in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And Slovenia, Croatia,
the Baltic states
Bosnia,
as well,
Serbia, they all split.
Yeah.
All split from Yugoslavia. It used to be called Yugoslavia. And it's not, for me, it's just a blink of an eye. It wasn't that long ago, Anyway, sidetracked, as me too. But super place, really nice. But how do you go about getting a role in such a prominent movie like that?
Well, that came through my agent. They were looking for. That was actually, I think, one of the last roles they were looking to cast for some reason. So they were looking for a character for an actor to play that character, and it was very much the normal channels. I auditioned, and they seemed to be interested right away. So the negotiations started like a few days later, maybe 4 or 5 days later, and that was it. We signed on. And then you move to the next stage, which is costume fittings, meetings, calls. I was also there was a lot of communication with the stunt coordinators and the stunt performers because there was a lot of driving and some fighting, and so they wanted to know. I suppose they wanted to understand, like, especially with the driving, they wanted to know where I was at, It's just even basic questions, like can you drive a manual? Can you drive an automatic? And obviously they always allocate time for training. So when I got to Croatia, we had some days allocated just to training driving. So we had a track, set up with cones, and I was doing the learning how to drift and learning how to manage the car because, what you're dealing with on set is very narrow streets, a lot of people around you, and usually a camera operator who is very close to you, sometimes in the car with you, sometimes on the side, sometimes in front of you. So learning where the brake is was a very important lesson, making sure that is one of the most important pedals you need to be aware of. So yeah, it was a normal process. I was very fortunate to get that audition, and obviously, I feel very privileged to have been offered the role and have worked on it. And it's nice to see that people appreciate it. I think it was the top watched streamed film on Netflix for, I think, 3 weeks
Yeah,
worldwide, which is good.
yeah.
You know.
So when you were there, are the big stars on set? Are you seeing them all the time, or are they kept
Well,
separate from everyone else?
no, we worked together if we were on in the same scene, but we had two units. We worked with two units simultaneously. That's a very common way of working these days, because the action is usually left into the hands of a director who predominantly does that. So on the second unit, we had a director named Scott Rogers, who's excellent when it comes to action. He's worked on John Wick. In fact, he had just come off the fourth installment of that franchise. He was on the Matrix Reloaded, again, the last installment. And he just, he has the vision. He has a very good team with him that he works with all the time. So there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of understanding, which saves time. It might not sound significant to people, but when you know the people that you're working with, you kind of understand each other a lot quicker, especially if you've worked together on numerous projects which maybe have similar scenes. It doesn't take long to understand like what the director is after. So because of the nature of my character, I was working on second unit a lot. So I worked with Scott Rogers and his team for quite a few weeks. But then of course we would get together with Mark, with Hallie, with Mike, and there was another cast member named Jessica, and of course we would work together, and then we would have our downtime during while they're setting up, while they're having lunch. So it's a really lovely environment. You also become very friendly with everyone else,
Yeah.
all the crew.
And because you hear stories, and I've spoken to a few quite prominent people, not on here in regular life, about being kind of you're almost segregated from the rest of the crew, because I think it's because they're so famous, and maybe they don't want people being bothered for autographs or selfies. Does that sort of thing does that still happen?
You're talking about cast though, not crew,
Yeah,
right?
the cast. Yeah,
Uh, didn't happen with me, not
yeah,
on this production. What what maybe what you might be referring to is the cast and crew do stay in separate accommodation. So it was only four of us for the most part. So in terms of cast, it was Mark Wahlberg, Halle Berry, Mike Coulter, and myself. So for a good month, we were just the four of us. So we were staying in one hotel, first in Croatia and then in Slovenia. And the crew would be in a different one. I'm not sure what the reason really is. Maybe it's cost, because we have to get our rest, and we have to just sort of be
yeah, of course.
comfortable,
Yeah,
not show up like we're drained completely. But no, otherwise when we're on set, it's everyone is there to complete their job. It's I wouldn't say there is any sort of segregation happening. Ultimately, we're all working towards the same goal.
Yeah.
We're all trying to make this the best it could be, trying to enjoy the experience. I think that has come to light a lot over the past few years, not just for me, I think for a lot of people, just trying to understand that it can't always be about the outcome. It has to be about the journey, because otherwise everything becomes a means to an end. And if you
What's it?
miss the process, that's a big chunk of it.
Yeah. What's it like for you doing auditions, especially when you're maybe not getting the same roles that you are now when you're just starting out? Because it looks to me, and it just seems like a very, like a humiliating thing to do, because you have to stand up in front of people and then,
Mm, yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, it's part of the job, and I think the secret is to not take it personal. That's definitely something that I think every actor needs to learn. You should never take rejection personal. And it's not necessarily an indication of your skill and talent. If you stand in front of a casting director, a producer, and you perform your scene, but they decide to cast someone else, the reason for that decision is virtually unknown to you, and will probably remain that way. You never really know why. But I can definitely say that most times it's nothing to do with the performance of the actor in terms of like how good it was. It's just, does it fit the role? Is it something that's interesting to the director, to the casting director and the producer who are sitting there watching you? Because as you know, films and series are very subjective. You might watch something and think that was brilliant, and I could fall asleep after the first 10 minutes.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So what's interesting to me is not necessarily interesting to someone else. And so there's that mismatch. So if you go for an audition and you've developed a character the way you think it should be, or the way you feel it's interesting, maybe you've understood the scene one way, but perhaps when it was written, the idea was slightly different. So there's a lot of variables. But you're right, it is, I wouldn't say humiliating, but it's definitely challenging. And the biggest is for most people, it's the rejection. For me, that's not an issue at all, and it never was. I think, to be honest with you, it's the inconsistency that actors have to deal with, which is very challenging. It's the inconsistency in terms of, how often you're working, how often are you being seen for auditions, because you obviously can't be right for every role. You can't be right for every production.
yeah,
So, and there's a lot of actors out there, and especially with the way casting is happening now, casting is happening worldwide. Before in early days, it used to mostly happen in Los Angeles. That was the heart in Hollywood. You had to live there because you needed to be physically able to go to the studio or wherever the casting was happening. They had to see you in person. Otherwise, you would never get seen. You would never be considered. Now we've gone the complete other direction. Now you could be in Zimbabwe, somewhere in, some really remote location. If you have an internet connection and an agent who represents you so that they could put you forward for the role, you can audition. Auditions happen through what's called self-tape. So you still mostly, you just send in your audition, and that's how the shortlisting happens, the narrowing down of potential candidates for the role.
mm.
And then you move on to what's known as a callback. So usually what happens is if they have an interest in you, then they want to kind of know who you are as a person. So if they like what you've done with the with the audition, with the character. Then they wanted to get to know you as a person. So you would either fly into London, or maybe you can have a call just like you and I are having right now. You might have another one after that, depending, it really depends. I mean, sometimes directors really know what they want and they can make a decision based on the first audition. So I've had quite a few of those, where it was very clear that I was right for the role and the director makes a decision. Sometimes it's the director, sometimes it's the producer, depending on who's in the hierarchy, who's the most powerful. But what I've learned personally is that that happens when you take a risk, when you really try to not stay within the boundaries or the expectations that you think, these people have for that character. You just kind of give it your own twist, and you take a risk. You just come up with something that's maybe not even in line with what the character is, how the character is described, So I've done that. Even for this film, actually, I took it a different direction because that's just how I saw the character. He was described in a very different way in the character description. And obviously it worked, Someone liked it.
Yeah, do you get recognized?
No, not really.
No.
Not really. I think here in Malta, there was a little bit of publicity going on about the film. And obviously, if people do watch it, sometimes you would be spotted. But no, I think in general, there's so much content out there, because that's how it's being referred to, these days. There's so much content, especially on the streaming platforms, that you watch one movie and then you move on to the next and you've already forgotten about it.
Yeah. Long gone are the days where you just look forward to the weekend when you can going to rent a video from Blockbuster or even go to the cinema. When last did you go to the cinema?
When did I go?
Yeah.
Not long ago, actually. I think I went to watch, was it Wolverine and Wolverine and Deadpool one. Yeah. When it's a high action movie, I think it's definitely worth watching in the cinema. On a big screen with the sound, and just, you want to be like really immersed in it. It becomes more of an experience then. It's not just, a couple of hours of being sort of, distracted. You're going for an experience.
Yeah, I think the last one I saw was The Revenant. And that was pretty impressive to see that.
That was a long time ago. That was an excellent movie. Yes.
It was.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, I've read the book. I'm trying to forget the name of the guy, the main actor.
I didn't even know that was based on a book.
Oh, it's based on a true story.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's something else. I mean, the bear. I mean, it's not the same. I mean, my God, what is the guy's name? Glass. That's his surname.
Is that the author of the book?
No. Well, the guy who Leonardo DiCaprio played. It's Charles Glass, I think it might be, something like that. Anyway, but yes, he did get attacked by a grizzly and got really badly messed up.
So how did the movie compare to the book? Because that's something that I often hear.
Yeah, no, it's completely different. He didn't go after and kill the English actor, bad guy. What was his name?
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy, yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't go after him, kill. I think they actually. It's such a long time since I read the book, but I think they actually reconciled, and they were, it was okay. He wanted his stuff back, and he got it back. And yeah. So anyway, but that was the last time I think I was at the cinema to see a film.
Yeah, the world has changed a lot.
Yeah. That's a hell of a film, though, isn't it?
The Revenant.
Yeah, my wife wasn't that keen on it, but there you go.
It's quite violent.
Quite violent.
So I would understand that. But in terms of the cinematography, the story, and I think that's sometimes what's lacking these days. The story is, I feel it's often neglected a little bit, or maybe there's not enough put into the story. It's more of a visual entertainment often.
Yeah. I mean, what do you call them? The comic book movies that we get nowadays, Transformers and Avengers and all that. I think I've watched 2 or 3 of them, but you just wonder what Hollywood are doing with these things, because there's not really, we grew up in an era when there was it was, I guess, almost like a golden age of cinema. But because of the way that the political climate has changed, you can't make the movies like, I used to, any Eddie Murphy movie, from the 80s or even the 90s. You couldn't make those nowadays. The Steve Martin movies, all that kind of thing, even Indiana Jones. There's not the same. You don't get. There's not a franchise of movies you get really excited about. You want to see the next part.
I mean, I'm always looking forward to the next Bond movie.
Of course, yeah.
I really enjoy the Mission Impossible series.
Oh yeah,
as well.
Yes. Actually, that's a good point.
There are good ones. It's just that not many productions. I don't know if it's because of budgetary constraints, but the time between going from script to screen, I feel, has become a lot shorter. So before, you would have a script would be, it would be drafted, and then it would go through several revisions, and even up until the first day of production, there's still revisions being made. Sometimes on the day, the scene would be changed because someone realizes that it could be better. But that needs time, needs time. It sort of has to settle in with everyone involved, and then you could start sort of polishing up a little bit, So before, it wasn't surprising for a movie to take 3-4 years in development, So they would have the script already, and from the time it's going into production until its release, it would be a few years,
Yeah. I ended up, it's a very bizarre situation in my life, but we went during COVID. I've said this many times here, but we went to Costa Rica for a month during COVID, because everything was closed here, and Costa Rica had just opened up, and because no one could really travel for work, so we decided as a family we'll just go across there, and for a month ended up staying 2. But because the Costa Rica had been closed down for 7 months, and they'd had no, government safety net, so everyone was, broke, completely broke. People were, it was getting serious, and so the hotels had opened up, and we ended up staying in this. And I mean, they just opened up, and so we got absolutely tremendous deal in this really lovely hotel. Yeah, and I ended up, because our daughter was about 10 months old, shall we say, and it was very hot because you're in the tropics, and being in the pool in the afternoon, you can't really go out on the beach because it's just a bit too hot for 1, 2, or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm in the pool on my own because there's very few people there, but there was this one Hollywood guy walking about, and I thought, I kind of recognize that guy. He's been in a few things I've seen on the screen. And one day I'm in the pool with my daughter, and we're hovering around the edges of the pool, following the shade of the trees because it was so hot. I'm just holding her, and this guy's in the pool with his kid, and my daughter's just little babies do. They stare, and she just wouldn't take her eyes off this guy, and it was like kind of a scowl as opposed to a look. And so we ended up having a bit of a laugh about it. I said, "Don't worry about her; she's actually all right." And we ended up chatting away, and because he was there on a holiday with his family, and I was there with my family, and it was just basically more or less the 2 of us in that whole hotel. There wasn't many other people.
Hotel.
Pretty much.
Wow.
So there wasn't very many people around. So we got on pretty friendly terms, this guy and I. It's just so weird. And he plays a tough guy. His name is Liev Schreiber, Wolverine's brother.
Yeah, of course. I know him. I know who he is. Yeah.
Ray Donovan, he's a bunch of stuff. He's been in loads of things, and he always
Yeah, he
plays a
was in
tough guy.
Wolverine as well.
Yeah, Wolverine's brother, I think he is what he said. But he's the big teddy bear. He's a big guy, but he's not. You wouldn't classify him as a. He certainly didn't come across as a tough guy.
Yeah,
You've been in the military. You know what a tough guy is, in a way.
that's true.
Yeah, it was just so weird. You get and he's typecast as a tough guy, and you get typecast as a bad guy. It's just, I guess that's what it is. It's you got to find your niche.
It's not necessarily something to complain about. I'll be honest, because I think if with everything these days, if you can sort of specialize a little bit, you become a safe choice. And a safe choice is more likely to guarantee you work. Whatever you do, this is the world we live in nowadays. Everyone is very specialized, I feel, so because of that, you expect a certain standard when it comes to the work that someone like that can deliver, so I don't see it as a disadvantage. I like I said, I find villain roles very compelling. Of course, I would like to venture into other characters as well. And I'm sure I have had the opportunity to do that in the past, and I'm sure I will again. But I also believe it's sort of what you project, and it's very easy to sort of go from one role to another that's fairly similar, because that's basically what people are seeing you do, so it's sort of, oh yes, I've seen him in this movie or this series, and he was, he portrayed that character well, so it's fairly similar, and I think he would be suited for that. So to get the chance to kind of dive into something completely different sometimes it's not easy. Someone needs to take the risk, basically. They can offer you an audition, and then if you prove to be the right one, then that's probably the start of something new. And then sometimes you need to sort of reinvent yourself a little bit as well. Maybe change your look and just try and sort of put a different, as a person as well, you try and put out a different vibe,
So what projects have you got anything coming up in the future?
Well, we are discussing, I have a couple of projects that I'm discussing in which I hopefully will be involved as a producer as well. Nothing yet that can be discussed. But yeah, I mean, I love what I do, and I think being able to have more of a creative input in a project would be very interesting for me. So as a producer as a writer, you get to create the project from a very early stage, as opposed to coming in when it's in pre-production and leaving once you're done with your role. So being there from beginning to end, I think, is something that I would really enjoy.
Talking about things that I'd like to have been able to see in the cinema. Have you must have watched Foundation? Have you watched that on Apple Plus?
I haven't started the series, but I've been hearing a lot of positive things about it.
It's so good.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
It is absolutely fantastic. And I get, some people have watched it and not particularly liked it. Almost everyone I've spoken to said it's incredible. And I know, because I did a podcast with, I think you might be related. Are you related to him? A friend of yours anyway, Colin Atzopardi, who's a producer.
No, we're not related, but we're very good friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we were talking that, and I was forgotten to, we did the whole podcast and I forgot to ask him about that, but we didn't get into it.
Not everyone in Malta is related.
No, I know.
Yeah. I mean, we've known each other from a long, way back from school, but no.
But what a project that is. No one, as far as I know, no one's tried to make that as a. Well, it wouldn't work as a movie because it's such a. I think it's
No, some stories
3 or
need to be
5
told
books.
as a series. You have too many characters. There's too much complexity in the story to just condense it into an hour and a half or 2 hours. It would be a shame. Besides, from a business perspective, a series is a lot better for a streaming platform like Apple TV or Netflix or Prime. They tend to attract a lot more, a much larger audience,
Yeah,
because
because the production on that is insane. It looks expensive as hell,
yes,
but
I'm sure it is. I'm
everything
sure it is.
about it.
Colin would be able to give you some more details on that, but
Yeah,
I'm sure it is.
yeah, but I'd never read any Isaac Asimov stuff, and he's the author of the Foundation. Well, it says it's a trilogy, but I think there's about 5 of them because there's going to be 5 seasons according to Colin. But it is, I mean, that guy, he wrote these in the 50s, and he's so far ahead of the game that you have to think that this guy has been downloaded that information back then because or channeled it or something, because it's what he's talking about is technology that's just basically starting to happen now with AI and of where it could go in the future. He's talking about
So
time
this
travel.
is all in the books.
Yeah, it's insane. It's such a. I mean, honestly, if you've got nothing to do today, get on that. It's on free on Apple TV Plus, right? You don't have to have a subscription for it, but it is insanely good. Just FYI, but they're long. It's a long series, so it's
Yeah,
got to devote quite a lot of time. But it's like the spiritual aspect. It's the creation story of the human race. You'll see what I mean when you're watching it. You think it's just going to be sci-fi, but there's so many layers to it, and I think you'll appreciate it because of what we were talking about last time. We spent about half the podcast talking about more like different levels of consciousness and things, and you get there on that particular show, and it's really good. I highly recommend it. But one thing I was going to ask you before you go away, because we were telling me about last time how you got if you're a vegan bodybuilder, which you don't
yeah.
really
Well,
hear.
I don't really call myself
Well, not
that anymore, but
bodybuilder is not the right word,
yeah,
but
fitness enthusiast.
fitness enthusiast.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've recently, after quite a few years of being a bit of a lazy bugger, I've got back into it to try and get back into shape. As we get older, as we progress in life, it becomes more and more important. And I've
Progress in life. I like that better.
yeah, as we get older, but I don't really. I mean, you don't look. But you say you were 45, 46,
Yeah.
45.
45.
Yeah, and you don't look old.
Yeah, it's how you feel as well.
I think it's how you feel.
It's not necessarily the appearance, but how you feel. So for me, the vegan lifestyle, it just suits me fine. I had no particular reason for switching. It wasn't something that was even a conscious decision. I kind of gradually gravitated towards it, and it's been 5 years, and I haven't looked back.
Is it anything to do? This genuinely a question. It's not a leading question at all. Is it anything to do with how you, like, your spiritual view of the world? Is it something to do with that?
I think subconsciously it was, yes.
Yeah.
I think subconsciously there was this urge for cleansing. And I had to start with something physical, something that I could actually see myself do. So part of the process was also consuming food from the earth, if you know what I mean. So lots of live vegetables, live fruit. Obviously, you need to get your protein, so that requires pulses like lentils and beans, and the cleansing part was more about just any animal products where we're starting to feel very sort of without trying to put people off, but there's a lot of chemicals going on with farming, right? So I started realizing that nothing really tasted the same anymore, like it used to, even as long as 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you get that as well?
Oh yeah, totally. But I live, you know
So,
where I live? I live up in the middle of the mountains, and one of my son's classmates, his father has a dairy. You know, so you can go there you bring your own glass bottle,
mhm.
and he'll fill it up with you with raw milk. He
Like
makes his
straight from the
cheese.
cow.
Yep, this kid's grandfather, his father runs the dairy, but his grandfather is like world champion cheesemaker. So it's all from the cow. They've got their own cows. The butter is grass fed. You know, the up in the it up. It tastes like butter tasted when I was a kid, like the real
But that's an
proper.
exception.
It is an exception, and so
So the
when I
food
go
you pick up from
elsewhere,
the supermarket
yeah,
is not
it's not the
like
same.
that. So
Here
it
in
smells
Switzerland,
different,
yeah, here in
you know,
Switzerland it
it
is
tastes different.
different. It's not the supermarkets are. The produce is of a higher quality than most places. Certainly, like the UK or the US. But you know, when you get things like that, so you know, I get you when you say things don't taste the same. But then when you can find good quality meat, which is
Absolutely.
and the cows
Absolutely.
are they're not in a factory farm.
Yeah.
It's a big difference. But I'm with you. Some things because I do used to do quite a lot of vegetarianism, but you know I wasn't strictly vegetarian. But let's say 5 days of the week I wouldn't have any meat. Maybe have
Yeah.
some meat at the weekend. Uh,
Yeah.
a
I mean, I
weekend
don't
vegetarian or
live
something like that.
in the mountains in Switzerland. So for me, that was never an option to go to a farm like you're describing and
Yeah,
get fresh, untampered with produce.
yeah,
So to be honest with you, I was just becoming like put off animal products, whether it was meat, whether it was dairy. Um, and it was a decision that I was taking very gradually, to stop eating meat, and then um, eventually I just eliminated any animal products from my diet. Obviously, introduced a lot of plant based because I was replacing, you know, and it was very interesting as well for me because I realized that I hadn't actually been consuming a lot of vegetables and fruits. Um, my mindset was still sort of very much in alignment with like my fitness days where it was all about macros, so protein, carbohydrates, and fats, and not so much about micronutrients, which are vitamins, minerals, and
mm.
antioxidants, which are extremely important. Um, so just the realization and eating live food for me, that's a game changer. You eat raw vegetables and fruits. It's actually energizing. You know how sometimes, I don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes you eat a big meal and you're sleepy afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the way it should be. If we're ingesting food, yes, there's a digestion process happening, but at the same time, you're absorbing live energy. So it should sort of counterbalance at the very least. So when you eat a meal and you're just completely exhausted, I think personally that's an indication that something isn't quite right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, and I've been talking about this with my friends for a couple of years now. Is to buy some land somewhere
Mm.
and kind of just go off grid, grow your own vegetables. Try and live as simply as
There
you
was a lot
can.
of that talk around 2020, 2021, where people were just, they were just
Hectic.
really having enough of everything that was going on in the world, and they just wanted to live their own life and be independent.
Yeah,
But how
still
many
going
people
on.
can?
I think it's actually it's gathering steam as we speak because I start to speak to people, the last people in the world I would expect, and they actually bring it up with me, and I say, you know what? Funnily enough, we've been talking about this for a while, but just having the fresh produce is is a big thing, and I think having the means to control your own food supply is also a big thing.
That would
But
be incredible. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm working on it. And you can come and join the commune.
I'll take you up on that offer. Yeah.
I was thinking Italy actually, so it's not that far from you.
Yeah, go Italy, go north. You know, you get the cooler climate, and
yeah,
but still you get the sun.
Yeah, plenty of it. It's not far
Around
from me.
Tuscany. Yeah,
It's
around
not.
Tuscany is incredible. I mean, have you been to Tuscany?
I was there in May. I was in
Yeah, you know,
Florence.
agriculture is huge over there.
Yeah,
You
yeah, you
could
get some.
drive through, and
Yeah, get some very good meat. The Florentine
I'm
steaks,
sure. Yeah, I'm
very
sure.
good. But so I've just started getting back into really looking after myself again, fitness wise. As in, I've always eaten well, but getting physically strong because it takes me a year or two of not really doing very much. I still do more than most because of where I live. You're out in nature a lot and you're walking and biking and swimming in lakes and what have you. So I've started doing not so much. I do a bit of weights, but mainly almost body weight. So I think is it calisthenics they call it.
Yeah.
And then I saw your program. You sent me your program. I was checking that out the other day. Yeah, it's very interesting. Because I've gotten to the problem now where I've become very stiff in my joints, my hips especially. And I'm trying to. So when I go to the gym, I will spend probably half of the time stretching off.
Yes, a lack of movement does that. You know, the body
Painful.
is a very intelligent organism. So when you don't use certain muscle groups, they just atrophy. They get stiff. You know.
Backache.
Yeah. So with resistance training, for me, one of the aspects that I love about it is the progression. If you're working with dumbbells or you're working with barbells or machines, cables, whatever you choose, there's a progression that can happen. You could choose the weight based on your level of fitness, based on the number of sets that you're going to perform, so you could slowly but steadily increase the resistance. If you're working with body weight, it's your body weight, You start with your body weight, you finish with your body weight. So there isn't that progression, especially when it comes to warming up. If you're gonna work out your chest or your back, and you're gonna start with push-ups, or you're gonna start with chin-ups, you're starting with your full body weight. You might use, like a lot of people nowadays have learned to use elastic bands. So you could use an elastic band to just to lessen the resistance slightly, whether you're doing a push-up or a chin-up. But still, in comparison to free weights, you're very restricted, So for example, when I do my workouts, I progress over 3 or 4 sets. I would start with what I refer to as a warm-up. It's not very light. It's just light enough to not, fail after 10 or 12 repetitions, but it's a decent way. Then I would step it up for the second set, my medium set, where I'm getting basically ready for the final one. And then I would perform a very heavy set on my third one, and that's it. Then I move on to the next exercise, and I do the same, I sort of use the same structure. So I start with a light, medium, heavy.
Yeah, okay. I like the idea of, because I often away can't go to the gym, and it's something you can just do at home. I'll just drop and do, I don't know, 4 sets of not maximum push-ups, but whatever, and then or just go straight and try and see how many push-ups I can do. But pull-ups, I like pull-ups and dips, dips, and push-ups and bodyweight squats. If there's nothing else around, you can't really beat that for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why
it's the warm-up that I would always strongly recommend doing prior to applying your entire body weight. You should, just elastic bands are actually a really good way to start. You could do so much with literally just one elastic band. You could, especially when it comes to rotator cuff in the shoulder, you want to really warm it up properly before applying your entire body weight. with presses, with pushing movements, a lot of people tend to get inflamed rotator cuff, which is inside the shoulder, or elbows, and normally it's because of a lack of proper warm up,
Yeah.
because once you warm up, then you have to keep in mind that it's not really about the muscle as much. It's more about the connective tissue. It's more about the tendons and the ligaments, what connects the muscle to the bone and what connects the bones together. You see, it's a different type of tissue. It's a lot less elastic.
Yeah.
So it requires a substantial warm up.
Yeah. That's why I'm doing a lot of the hip stretching, is because I get injuries, and it's not injuries. It's like, it is, as you say, it's the connecting stuff.
It's an inflammation, yeah. And it persists because if you don't rest enough, then you're constantly putting more pressure on that specific point, and the inflammation kind of never really goes away.
So when you're obviously a very self-disciplined man, how do you maintain that?
How do I maintain my workouts?
No, your self-discipline to maintain being a vegan.
I think I enjoy a certain level of self-discipline. I think it makes me feel like I have a sense of control and direction. You have to also remember I started from a very young age. So I was probably about 15 years old when I began taking resistance training really seriously. So, fast forward, 30 years, you kind of, it's built in, and you feel out of place without it. So for me, having a structure when it comes to my meals, having an exercise regime that I follow regularly, it's not only fulfilling, it's sort of, in a way, comforting as well. It's like, it's something that connects me to my past. It's something that defines me, even though I know we shouldn't really be defined by what we do or what we've achieved. But there's an element that's comforting to me. It's like, it's the, it's the one discipline, is the one thing that I've sort of had over the past at least 3 decades, So I don't think discipline is something that you can, I mean, you could improve your discipline, but it's something that many people are kind of just happy to have in their life, What I do recommend to people, though, if they struggle with it, is having a goal, setting an objective. And usually that's where motivation comes in. And then if you're motivated, there's no other way but to become disciplined, because it takes consistency. And that is what discipline is about. Discipline is about being consistent. If you're tired, doesn't matter. You go to the gym, If you're craving something that's not part of your nutrition plan, you let it go and you eat, whatever you had planned in your meal plan. So, I think the lack of discipline comes usually from a lack of motivation. So what I did is I got into competitions very early on, and that was a perfect reason for me to become very disciplined, because now I had a date by which I had to be in my best possible shape. And once I was done with competitions, then I was working in the fitness industry, and I had photo shoots. When I relocated to California and the West Coast of the United States, I was every week doing shoots, sometimes 2 or 3 in a week, while traveling from one state to another. But the fact that I had a deadline, there was no excuses. There was no, I couldn't slack at all. And then once you have that, and you have the motivation, you become a disciplined person. If you're enthusiastic enough about what you're trying to achieve. So you have to set I think you have to set a very clear and defined objective. You know, sometimes, I just want to be healthy. It's not enough because, first of all, people define being healthy in a different way. What is healthy? Is it, just not being short of breath if you go up a flight of stairs, or running a marathon, So you have different levels. So you set your objective, which is something that you have to be comfortable with, something that you have to genuinely aspire to achieve. And then I believe the motivation will drive the discipline.
I mean, do you get up in the morning and first thing you do is go for your workout? Is that your plan?
That's what I do. Yeah, 6:30 is my workout time.
Get up and just get straight after it.
Yeah. Have some water. Go straight to the gym. I mean, starting your day with any form of movement, it doesn't have to be resistance training, but it gets the energy flowing. And what you're telling your body is it's game time. You know, you get out of bed, and instead of slowly just like waking up, and maybe sipping that coffee or tea, whatever your morning routine is, you go straight to the gym, and now you're lifting heavy weights. So your concentration needs to be there. You need to be aware and alert. And obviously you need to release energy, you need to generate energy actually, and then you can release it. So that's the message that you're giving your body, is it's time to get the energy flowing.
Yeah. And
it's great.
I, to be honest with you, if I have a bad night's sleep, then I will go, the thought of going to the gym straight away the next day. Like for instance, yesterday I had a terrible night's sleep. And, the thought of going to the gym was just, it was too much.
Dreadful.
And, I know. And I actually couldn't because my wife was away. So I was there with the kids yesterday and I didn't get the chance to go. But I admire you if you can do that. Get up. I mean, I know everyone can.
Look,
everyone can, but it's just a case
because of how I started out, there was just no excuse. If you're in a competitive sport, all you can think of is the people you're going to compete against, right? So if you have a bad night's sleep and you're questioning whether you should go to the gym or not, the first thought that used to come to my mind is, would my competitors be going to the gym?
Yeah.
Of course they would. I'm not missing that. Yeah. It's the same with food. If you're getting close to a deadline, do you want to cheat? Maybe you have that craving for sugar or for anything savory. What would my competitors be doing right now? And you might be completely off track. You might not have any clue what they're doing, but you sort of talk yourself into it, and you do it for long enough. Now it becomes a program, and I don't have competitors right now, but for me, fitness, first of all, is something that I love because it gives me discipline and it gives me sort of a purpose, but also for my work, I mean, I'm doing even up until this last movie, we're doing real stunts. I'm doing, I'm hanging out of a car. I'm first of all, there's the stamina for being, to be on set for 12 hours, so you're picked up at 5 a.m., you go to unit base, you go into hair and makeup and costume, and you're on set by maybe 7:30, 8, and you wrap at 7 p.m. So you're up on your feet. Yes, you have a lot of time to rest in between. But, sometimes you're needed like for hours on set, and you have to perform one take after the other, so it builds a certain inner strength, a core strength, we call it, where you can, at the very least, carry yourself for a certain amount of hours. So
when you were there, were you working out with Mark Wahlberg? He's a bit of a...
I wasn't. He's known for his 4 a.m. club. And I don't know if he actually told me he didn't because he flew in from Los Angeles, so he was quite jet lagged. So he did miss out on a few workouts until he kind of got his body clock in order. But I think it doesn't. When you're working on a production, sometimes you have to kind of let go. But I was working out very early. I was working out before my pickup time,
Mm.
which sometimes was 5, sometimes was 6. So yeah, it just feels really good. It just feels really good. It's also like I don't like the word obligation, but you almost get this sense of guilt if you don't work out when you've done it for so long. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I had that yesterday.
And it works the other way around. The satisfaction that you feel when you know that you've pushed yourself in spite of maybe having a bad night, in spite of being tired, any excuse. What I've learned is that if you want to find an excuse, there's always going to be one. And unless you're, bedridden, like you literally can't get out for whatever reason, then you can always go to the gym and just maybe not, perhaps not perform at your most intense level. You could tone it down for a bit, but at
Do
least
some
you show,
stretching.
yeah. But if you show up, you see, it's mostly about that. What I've learned is if you get into the habit of showing up in the gym, that's the habit there. It's formed. You wake up, you go to the gym. You wake up, you go to the gym. You do it enough times, the habit is there. Sometimes, I mean, even to this day, sometimes I will lift heavy weights and then maybe the following week I would have to drop it down a little bit. I would do my second set and I would realize, you know what, today is not, for some reason, it's not going to happen. The third set is not going to be as heavy as last week. And it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. There are so many variables, It could be something as simple as being a little bit dehydrated, a little bit depleted. Depleted means you haven't had enough maybe carbohydrates. So there isn't enough glycogen in the muscle, which is an energy source for working out. So you just, but you showed up, you did the work, and you did the best you could, but if you're going to be looking for an excuse, whether it's bad night's sleep or whether you have something in the morning, that you have to go to, there's always a way around it. That's what I've learned, because I've had to work out in all kinds of situations, especially with travel. As you know, you've traveled and, sometimes in hotels you don't have the most, the widest variety of equipment in the gym, but you make do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why then I created programs that virtually just require dumbbells and a bench, for example. That was one thing that really worked well for me, learning how to perform a whole full body workout with just a set of dumbbells, a small variety of weights and a workbench, and you can target every muscle group, and provided there's a sufficient amount of weight, you could do a really good workout.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have enough weight, then, you push for higher repetitions and you still get a good workout. Different, but, good enough.
So, well, I'm going to let you go, Andrei, but what's your website where people can check out your program?
The website is elixirlife.com. And there's a number of different programs on there. They're not subscription based. They're buyouts. So whatever program is purchased, it's there for life. So they have access to it for forever, practically. They all come with a nutrition plan and instructional videos for every single exercise as well. And we try to price them as reasonable as possible. We've put a lot of work, and I wanted to create something that's a little bit unique. I didn't want to put something out there that's identical to the thousands of videos on YouTube. So I wanted to shoot them in a very particular way. I wanted to sort of blend what I really love doing, which is film and fitness. So I worked with an extremely talented cinematographer and a small crew to, just to get that sort of feel of slightly cinematic feel to
Cool.
to the workout video. But yeah, we're really happy with what we've created, and we've had some very good feedback, and I hope people keep finding it beneficial. So, and we do, we also release little videos on our Instagram page, with a few tips for people to benefit from, whether it's like how to exercise correctly or how to enhance certain muscle groups better.
All right, done.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
We'll have to work out together, Andrei. Next time you're in, well, you're in, yeah. Either I come down and visit your way, got some people to meet down there.
One way or another, we'll make it happen.
Yeah, or you find your way up here.
Yeah, I'd love to.
It
sounds amazing.
It is.
I'd love to.
It's a pretty amazing place. But Andrei Claude, listen, good to speak to you again. It's been a couple of years since the last one we did, and
it's been an absolute pleasure.
Apologize for my throat today. I have no idea what's going on. Maybe that's why I didn't sleep well. But yeah,
sounds fine.
Pleasure to speak to you too. And
same here.
We'll stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the best, my friend. Take care, and all the best in your career as well.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening.